and ask somebody which one is which, they might not be able to tell.
Thanks for joining us. The OPP is now saying the so-called Freedom Convoy's slow roll on Highway 401 last month contributed to a fatal collision. Police say the man who died crashed into a vehicle at the very end of the convoy, which they say was traveling below the speed limit. One traffic engineer says that these slowdowns, even in construction zones, can be dangerous.
This is especially true when the approaching vehicles are not aware of the situation, because of the either visibility or other things that they don't know of. And by the time they reach to the end of queue, it's a little bit too late because because of their high speed.
The crash happened on January 27th along Highway 401 in Chatham, Kent, near Bloomfield Road. 43-year-old Robert Anthony Sharon was airlifted to hospital with life-threatening injuries where he later died. 2 vehicles were involved and 2 others were injured. Chatham, Kent, OPP haven't said if any charges will be laid. Now, those slow rolls were, of course, a precursor to the Ottawa convoy blockade that lasted 3 weeks, dismantled only after the Prime Minister invoked the Emergencies Act yesterday. The act survived a vote in the House of Commons, experts saying it's the most powerful federal law, giving the federal government substantial short-term powers to deal with a crisis. It's being used to deal with protests like the ones in Ottawa, but it was triggered, according to Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, because of what happened here in Windsor.
For me, the conversations I had with our Windsor MP, Eric Kazmierczak, who was talking about the impact of the disruption of the Ambassador Bridge almost as soon as it started happening.
That's from February 14th, the day the Emergencies Act was invoked, the same day the Ambassador Bridge reopened. Police arresting demonstrators and towing vehicles after days of protests against vaccine mandates. A week later, Windsor-Tecumseh Liberal MP Eric Kazmierczak voted in support of using the Emergencies Act.
But it is important to emphasize that these measures are not imposed on communities that do not need them. These measures will only be felt by a few hundred unlawful protesters in communities like Ottawa and Windsor and Coots, where disruptions took place.
Conservative Essex MP Chris Lewis voted against the motion, saying the end of the blockade cited to invoke the act proves it's not needed.
The very fact that the standoffs at the Windsor, Detroit, and Coots borders were ended peacefully clearly demonstrates that the Emergency Act was, quite frankly, unnecessary.
Here's how Leanne Rood, the Conservative MP for Lambton, Kent, Middlesex, described the first weekend of protests in Ottawa.
People were hugging in the streets. It was like a Canada Day times 1,000.
She voted against the motion, saying constituents are worried about the financial impacts.
They're gripped with fear that donating to or purchasing from anything not approved by the government will result in their assets being frozen.
Sarnia-Lambton MP Marilyn Gladue, also Conservative, also voting against the act, citing similar concerns.
I have emails from people in my riding that are claiming that they had their accounts frozen for buying a Freedom Convoy t-shirt.
Those claims have not been proven. The RCMP say a list of influencers in the Ottawa protests have been given to financial institutions, but individual donor names have not been provided to banks.
The fundamental question that the government has put before us today is this: do we believe that the Public Emergency Act is the right tool for right now?
That's Conservative MP for Chatham-Kent-Leamington Dave Epp. He voted against the motion, saying that the bar has not been met.
Madam Speaker, simple common sense tells us that if we take the total of what the Prime Minister expects the Emergency Act to bring and subtract it from what is already covered under the existing laws and resources, then I respectfully submit that the difference with what we are left with pales in comparison to the constitutional precedent that we are asking this House to confirm.
Windsor West MP Brian Massey, a New Democrat, is the longest-serving politician in the region. The blockade at the Ambassador Bridge in his riding. He voted in favor of the motion, questioning why other members thought the threat was over.
And I can tell you the barriers are lined up for miles on my constituency to prevent further action. In fact, since the Emergency Measures Act has been in place, convoys have been turned back, and there still are threats that could take place. It's totally irresponsible to put that on local municipalities, and I can't understand why Ontario and Quebec MPs would want to put that entirely on our onus, and the danger is still around.
The motion passed. The act cannot stay in place for more than 30 days. The Prime Minister has not been clear on when the powers will be lifted. Key leaders in the Ottawa protest have been in court for bail hearings today. Tamara Leach has been denied bail, the judge saying that she believes Leach is at a high risk to reoffend. Pat King also seeking bail, but there won't be a decision on that today.
Things are going to change. I don't think something like this will be able to occur again. I think they'll jump on the gun quicker next time.
Now, the protest site area in downtown Ottawa slowly returning to normal. The main downtown mall, though, has reopened for shoppers. The former red zone around the protest, where people were asked to stay away, it's also gotten smaller with the reopening of Spark Street. But Parliament Hill itself still off limits to the general public. NATO's chief says that Russia's Vladimir Putin appears ready to strike Ukraine after surrounding 3 sides of the country with a massive military buildup. It's left the Ukrainian community in Windsor angry, afraid, and worried for family members back home.
I know relatives are concerned about what's happening with their relatives and concerned for the fact that young people, the sons and daughters, grandchildren might be called up and are being called up to take part in a war against Russia.
NATO allies, including Canada, have been swift to condemn Putin's move yesterday to recognize the independence of 2 rebel-held territories inside eastern Ukraine. Yesterday, a Reuters witness filmed convoys of armored vehicles moving through streets in Donetsk, one of the 2 territories. Today, Russian lawmakers backed their president's call to deploy Russian troops to those regions for what Moscow calls a peacekeeping mission. So far, Western governments have been reluctant to get involved in a direct military action against Russia. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau says Russia's military actions mount to a further invasion of Ukraine's sovereignty. He has outlined what he calls the first round of Canada's economic sanctions in the face of Russian aggression on its neighbor.
We will ban Canadians from all financial dealings with the so-called independent states of Luhansk and Donetsk. We will sanction members of the Russian parliament who voted for the illegal decision to recognize these so-called republics. We will ban Canadians from engaging in purchases of Russian sovereign debt. And we will apply additional sanctions on 2 state-backed Russian banks and prevent any financial dealings with them.
Trudeau has authorized the deployment of an additional 460 Canadian Armed Forces members to neighboring Latvia. Canada will also send additional frigate and maritime patrol aircraft to the region. A local Unifor leader threw his hat in the ring to become national president of the union today. Dave Cassidy, president of Unifor 444, which represents workers at Stellantis Assembly Plant and Caesars Casino, says he will run for the position. Derry Dias, the current president, recently announced he will be stepping aside in August due to health issues. Cassidy says he was hoping to get an endorsement from Dias and the National Executive Board, but did not. He says he's running with an endorsement from rank and file members as well as local leadership.
This is not about Dave. This is about the organization. And I think that with the structure that we have here at 444, this structure locally can be used nationally. And I think that, with myself and the right team around, we can make that change and make Unifor something different.
Cassidy says his focus remains on local issues for now. The election doesn't take place until August at the National Convention expected to be held in Toronto. It's not often that government stops charging for a service, but in less than a month, license plate stickers will be scrapped altogether for many Ontario drivers. The government announcing today there will be no fees for license plate renewal. It comes as the legislature resumes for its final session before an election. Farah Morelli has more.
Enjoy getting rid of those stickers.
Premier Doug Ford making it official. License plate stickers will soon be no more.
And this change will provide real savings to drivers all across this province.
Here's what you need to know about the changes. As of March 13th, the stickers are being scrapped altogether for passenger vehicles, light-duty trucks, motorcycles, and mopeds, meaning Southern Ontarians won't have to pay the $120 annual fee. For those who've paid fees since March 2020, they'll also be eligible for a refund. Drivers will still have to renew their license plate every year or so, but at no cost. The cost to the government, though, an estimated $1.1 billion, money that critics said to date they would have liked to have seen allocated elsewhere.
That is $1 billion election boondoggle that means less money for healthcare, less money for education, less money for affordable housing.
The last thing that they need is a government that makes gimmicky kinds of announcements but doesn't deal with the fundamentals.
Supplementary question.
The announcement comes on the first day of the final session of the legislature before the provincial election. The Premier, though, noticeably absent from question period.
How can any community in Ontario have confidence that this Premier will be there for them and not abandon them the way that he did the people of Ottawa and Windsor in this situation?
The government hammered on all sides for what some called provincial inaction during the Ottawa blockade.
I think really
the government defended its actions.
We did what we needed to do. We gave the police services the resources they needed through the emergency measures.
Today, Ontario's Minister of Finance hinted help is on the way for Ottawa businesses impacted by the weeks-long blockade, but didn't reveal any more details. All eyes now are on the budget, which must be tabled in the coming weeks. It could offer hints of what we could see in Ford's re-election platform. Farah Morali, CBC News, Toronto.
What's sweeter than maple syrup? Walnut syrup. It's a new type of sugary sap that a Harrow couple are tapping into.
And it's not finished yet, but you can see the colors. Well, we decided we needed to try making walnut syrup because we only had 15 maple trees out in our woods, and our first year we did 17 taps and then decided, all right, this is great to offer this syrup for our guests because everything we do here is based on local. That's really important to the two of us. And so I did some research to find out what other trees can make syrup. And since we have walnut trees, we thought walnut syrup makes sense. We are the Walnut Grove. And sure enough, you can make syrup. The issue is maple syrup, you take 40 liters of sap, you filter it, you end up, after you boil it, to get 1 liter of syrup. With walnut, it's more than double. It's 90 liters of sap to get 1 liter of syrup. So it's initially, essentially gold. People think the walnut syrup might be nutty. It's just a little richer and a little sweeter. It's very nice, and it's just missing that maple flavor. So right now we have 25 taps on maple trees, and we've got about 80 taps on walnut trees. And because we really liked the syrup last year, and we did 50 taps last year total, I was saying to Bob, we have to put a bucket on every walnut tree that's big enough to wear a bucket. We don't know anybody else who's as crazy as we are to attempt to make syrup from walnut trees. I'm realizing, and I had phone calls today, people are really keen on learning about this walnut syrup, and because it's different. And it suits what we do here because we are the Walnut Grove, and everything that we have on our property, we're trying to be as local as possible. And you can't get more local than the trees in your backyard.
We continue to tickle your taste buds here on CBC Windsor News. A Windsor native and food blogger is aiming to bring Black cuisine and food culture to a wider audience. Eden Hagels runs Black Foodie. She launched the site in 2015 after a negative dining experience. And while she lives in Toronto, she's got strong roots out here in Windsor. Her parents were the ones who first opened Marathon, the Ethiopian restaurant on University Avenue. While the restaurant is now under different ownership, her appreciation for all things culinary, it hasn't dampened. She says there are many places to explore Black food in Windsor, and now for Black History Month, she's challenging people to try them.
Black food is so many things. It's super diverse, so there isn't one answer to it. It can be delicious Jamaican food. It can be incredible Ethiopian platters. There is so much diversity that exists within different Black communities. So Black food culture, to me, though, always has lots of flavor and is pretty exciting. In Windsor, there are a few places in which you can experience different African and Caribbean foods. I like Roti Bowl and Soul because they have both Caribbean food, but also soul food, and you can get them both from the same place. And then Lagos Grill offers really delicious Nigerian food.
Take the Black Foodie Challenge, support a Black restaurant, and explore a taste of the African diaspora.
during Black History Month, we started this challenge. It's the Black Foodie Challenge, and everybody's invited to take part in this and to essentially support a local Black restaurant and also maybe even try out a new cuisine from within Black food culture. So I'm going to start off with, I'm in a classic. I think a lot of people are familiar with jerk chicken, you know, so we have some jerk chicken, some rice and peas, and some coleslaw. Now, I love this, but I think for me, like some of my favorite parts of Jamaican food are the sides. So, I mean, I have like, you know, a festival, which is just like a fried piece of dough. And like, if I break it up, you know, it's so soft and fluffy. And inside, this is really good when you dip it into the gravy, or I like to actually dip it into the pepper sauce, which I get on the side. So during the Black Foodie Challenge, like we give people those tips, you know, maybe you know about jerk chicken, but do you know about banana fritters or the festivals or, you know, pepper shrimp and all these other incredible Jamaican dishes that you can try. And then of course, I love a good roti. So I have some roti right here. This is a chicken curry roti. And for people that might not be familiar with Trini food, but are familiar with Indian food or like Sri Lankan food, like this is a great place to start because you're gonna have all of those flavors that are very familiar, but there's a different twist. Black History Month is a great place to start because, you know, there's a lot of awareness now around where we came from, like the amazing contributions of Black Canadians, but that's not where it stops. You know, I think we're still here. We have amazing restaurants, businesses, and I think a really easy way to support a Black business is to order amazing food and like get to enjoy these awesome flavors. So this Black Foodie Challenge goes beyond Black History Month because these restaurants exist beyond February and they're making good food all year round. Like this on a hot summer day is incredible.
Looks incredible. I am excited to pop out and eat some food. It looked like today you could take a bite out of the fog, just like a cotton candy of depression surrounding our city. Couldn't see the trip for a while either. We will take a look at the weather, see how long this sticks around. We got a little bit of a warm up, I think, in the middle of the week. That's next. Some thick fog out there in Windsor today. You could say it was a little bit magical as it made the top of the Ambassador Bridge. Even Detroit really just disappeared. Colette Kennedy joins us now through all of this fog. Tell us what we can expect tonight, later in the week.
Get my way.
It's just like you feel like you could swim through it. I know, like you've been in Newfoundland. I spent time in Newfoundland. When you see it come here, it's just like the place just disappears. You miss the foghorn at that point.
Yeah, that is some thick, soupy stuff. And you know, there are still areas right now reporting some fog in the region. We still have some visibility issues. And add to that some roads in cases where things are a little bit wet. Just all kinds of things happening as this system moves through. Temperatures coming up, and then they're going to be coming down quite significantly once the cold front goes through, but also some windy conditions as that front passes. So if you look at the daytime highs, I just want to kind of start there because 9, we still sit there in Windsor, but St. Catharines, our neighbors to the east, we're up to 10 degrees. But if I give the current temperatures, they've actually now dropped to 4 degrees, like I said, but we're still holding on. So kind of an interesting story here. It's not going to last as that front is coming in this evening and we get past midnight, the temperatures will really start kind of pulling back on us. In terms of the wet weather, the worst is over. The heaviest stuff now well off to the north and east. It is not over with, though, through the Ottawa Valley. Freezing rain concerns there, carrying on with freezing rain warnings, also some rainfall warnings. But the ice, that buildup or accretion, as we call it, 5 to 10 millimeters possible there before that moves out of the area. It's just some kind of drizzle, patchy light shower activity, and patchy fog that we'll continue to contend with here. But there's a look. And by the way, in the rainfall warning areas, it's 15 to 25 millimeters. I know not so much as a concern in southwestern Ontario, but just keeping that in mind. Hopefully you don't have any traveling that you need to be doing tonight. By tomorrow, things improve. So as that works its way through and the temperature falls, we could see a little bit of freezing drizzle again this evening through the overnight hours. That potential is there, quite a lot of cloud cover into tomorrow, and I've even put a chance, just with some of those stronger winds from the west, of getting into some light flurry activity. Now, looking ahead, I do want to tell you that Thursday night and into Friday, especially in the morning hours on Friday, another system coming through where we might be seeing some significant or measurable snowfall. So watching that carefully too. Let's just get this system out of here first of all. So looking at the temperatures through the overnight as they begin to come down, and certainly not terribly warm tomorrow, especially when you factor in those winds out of the west to northwest. So a look beyond that, well, things are still running a little below seasonal. That is the case, but at least we'll have some days and pockets in there too where we get into some sunshine, Chris.
I was trying to set us up for a nice little warm blast here. I was just willing it into existence.
I wish we could make that happen, but not quite yet. We'll get there.
I'm sure we will. Putting our heads together. Thanks, Ms. Clapp.
You're welcome.
Now, if you can't find warmth locally, you might be running away to go and find it. The airport, international flights, that living with COVID idea of traveling returns. What you should look out for next. The federal rules around international travel, they're easing as of next week, and Canadians eager to pack their bags and get going. CBC's Julia Wong takes a look at what they can expect as governments and the travel industry switch to a learning to live with COVID approach.
Kelly Bergquist is a world wanderer, and she is not letting COVID-19 get in her way.
I would wear a mask forever if I have to, just to be able to travel.
The Edmonton woman traveled throughout the pandemic and has more trips planned.
Next month I'm going back to Ottawa, April I'm going to Puerto Vallarta, and May I'm going to Sweden.
For Canadians who have stayed home the last 2 years, there's pent-up demand to get away.
We're going to Phoenix.
Really liberating.
I think it's super nice to be able to travel.
Calls and bookings have surged since the federal government announced it's dropping its advisory against non-essential international travel at the end of the month, as well as PCR testing requirements for vaccinated Canadians coming home from abroad. But travelers still have a lot of health-related questions.
What are the COVID rates in the destination that I'm traveling to? They're interested in the number of people that are at a resort or a hotel. They are interested in all of the safety measures.
Before they buy a ticket post-COVID, the Conference Board of Canada says travelers are also considering the distance they might travel in case they have to come home quickly.
Being able to head south but also be close to home is boosting people's confidence in booking.
When it comes to travel insurance, policies changed throughout the pandemic, and they're expected to evolve again now that travel restrictions are easing and when COVID transitions to an endemic disease.
And most of the Canadian policies are going to provide protection for individuals if they get sick due to COVID. I think we're going to see that continue even further once we move into that endemic state. So looking at it just as any type of condition that you've got.
Another trend that's persisting, last-minute bookings, an indication Canadians don't want to book a trip in case travel rules change yet again or a new variant emerges. Julia Wong, CBC News, Edmonton.
Wild when we think about 2 years ago today, Amy Dodge was reporting on this coronavirus that we were all trying to get a knowledge base on, and here we are talking about finally being able to travel. That's it for us here at CBC Windsor News. Don't forget, for news anytime, you can go on our website, cbc.ca/Windsor. We're on social media too. You can find us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. We're going to leave you with a look at the tower cam and the fog that continues to envelope all of Windsor. And again, if you want any more details on any of the stories that we're covering, you can tune into our morning show tomorrow morning as well with Tony Doucette, where we will have full coverage of the day's events and what you need to know to start your morning. That's it for us. Thanks for watching. Have a good night.